Well, hello everybody. Time flies. It must be 5 years since I made the last video. Well, what has brought me out of the woodwork? Well, first of all, let's find out who me is. My name is Richard Vere-Compton. And if you really want to know who I am, just ask Google, who was Richard Vere-Compton? As you can see, I'm sitting on this settee like I always do, and I'm very much Richard Vere-Compton. I'm emphasizing this because when I wrote this book, So You Want to Build, I can't remember the title of it, So You Want to Build the Naked UFO / Plasma Active Craft, I needed a pseudonym, so I called myself Set Plasma Free. Now I'm going to read from the autobibliography in the front of the book. Set Plasma Free knows what it's like to be bottom of the class in every subject and to leave school at the age of 16 to wash dishes and make beds. All these years ago, dyslexia was not known as a disability, neither was Asperger's syndrome. In Set Plasma Free's case, his brain could see things that other people couldn't or did not want to see. However, Set Plasma Free has the ability to communicate with voice, which he believes is a talent, and talent can only come as a gift from God, for helping him to rise above all the ridicule that has been thrown his way over all these years. Thanks to Chipmunka Publishing for giving people like Richard an opportunity to write and publish his work. And so consequently, this book was published by Chipmunka Publishing under the copyright of Set Plasma Free 2010. I will give you the ISBN number that's on the back. ISBN 978184924333, and of course it's got a cover price of £10. But since 2010 it's available on the internet from very many different sources. Why have I taken this opportunity to bring this to your attention again? It's very simple. I have just heard that a university, shall we say one in Japan is as good a place as any, have made the miraculous discovery that if you rotate a plasma, it has the effect of bending gravity, and everybody's very excited about it. But this book talked about rotating plasmas in 2010. That's when it was published. But my papers and my documentary work goes back to my time at BP under the mentorship of the late Professor D.H. Desty, who then ran the Blue Sky Department at BP Research Centre, Sunbury-on-Thames, London, England. We were looking in parallel to the work that Professor Eric Laithwaite was carrying out at the time on gyros, and we were interested to see whether we could harness centrifugal force and centripetal force to work instead of against each other, but one at the same time. And this meant rotating masses at high speed and then suddenly stopping that mass to see that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. But I got bored with the mechanics and postulated the fact that could I rotate electrons, which fundamentally have no mass, at a high enough speed to create a centrifugal force by just spinning a plasma. Now, to do this, I later wrote a paper for my, how can I put it to you, my White House lobbyist, the late George S. White. The S stands for Sigmund, as in Sigmund Freud, I should imagine. He was interested in all aspects of green energy conservation and new methods of generating electrical power. So under his guidance, I produced the concept of TRIP. Now listen to how it works out. T, triangular. R, rotating. I, interrupted. Plasmas. And in simple terms, I want you very clever people to imagine an equilateral triangle on a piece of paper. So you've now got 3 equal angles. We'll call them A, B, and C. And right in the center of the triangle, we have a point called D. And this book, so you want to build the Naked UFO, the plasma active craft, is simply built round TRIP. But there's lots of little parables as to where we are in today's society. But TRIP is the key to atmospheric rotating plasmas. And how does TRIP work? At the center of point D, you have a source of very high voltage. The book will tell you that the very high voltage is created by X number of thin disks rotating at high speed and being brushed to create a very large static discharge, but using the container as a capacitor so that you are able to take this very high voltage as a pulse. Now, once you've got a pulse from D, what happens at A, B, and C? A, B, and C are also homopolar generators, but this time they have thick disks and they hold current as opposed to voltage. So what you do, you arrange a shuttering arrangement so that you discharge point D to point A. This enables the high current to flow to D. No sooner has it flown to D as a lightning discharge in atmosphere than you switch A off and you then go to B. B is another violent lightning discharge, and then you switch that off and you go to C. Now you have had 3 consecutive lightning discharges underneath a circular aerofoil. This means that you are making a plasma, a very hot, unstable source underneath a circular aerofoil. Now, because it's very hot and because it's electrons, it has the effect of needing more and more electrons to keep the plasma going. But because you're switching it so quickly, from A to D, from B to D, from C to D, you start to rotate the plasma. Yes, remember that university that has discovered if you rotate a plasma, you can bend gravity? Well, I wrote the paper in 1981. This is why I'm making this video. I want to point out to you, because I hate to use this expression, that people like me are quasi-aliens in this normal world. We see things differently. So, as an Asperger sufferer, now, normally Asperger sufferers, as you look at the textbooks, will say these people find it difficult to communicate, difficult to settle down in society. But part of their brain is very, very highly attuned in a very small spectrum. Well, I have the strangest of Asperger syndrome. I can over-communicate. I can read people's body language. I can understand their thoughts. This is why I'm able to sit in front of this camera and communicate to you that TRIP is the only solution for building a circular aerofoil that will take us to the planets. Now, before I get carried away anymore, let's look at another piece of science and technology which has just this minute hit the press. It's called the diamond chip. I'm going to put this book down. The diamond chip is nothing more than a chip. But oh, it's such a very clever chip. It's so patented up to the eyeballs that the patent cannot be broken, and the reason it cannot be broken is because this particular patent is pure science fiction. What have these people done? They have taken on a nanoscale radioactive waste. Aha! When you talk of radioactive waste, we're not talking about plutonium or decaying uranium, but we're talking of low-grade radioactive waste that naturally emits alpha particles. Alpha particles are a fancy name of random electrons. Now, once you get random electrons, you have to organize them. But because it's radioactive on a nanoscale, it produces a nano amount of heat. Now, once you get heat, correspondingly, you get cold. When you get heat and cold, you're able to capitalize on a chemical reaction, on an electrochemical reaction, called the peltoelectric effect, whereby if you put a current into a substrate, which is primarily bismuth, you will produce heat on one side of the chip and cold on the other. However, it's a very clever system, but it's grossly inefficient. So as it's inefficient, it can only be used for certain applications. But what the people have done with the diamond chip, they have managed to get a continuous nano heat source, which they can now put into a peltoelectric substrate and make electricity outwards. So what they are saying is that if we can take electricity or power from a peltoelectric chip, why can't we, with our technology of substrates, build a push-pull amplifier? A push-pull amplifier it's been stolen from the days of radio, where you had one valve amplifying a signal, pushing it against another valve, and so that you could take a weak signal and turn it into a strong signal. But all the time, of course, you had to heat the cathode to make the electrons flow. But with their push-pull amplifier, you don't have to heat the cathode because you've got the decaying nano radioactive material. So their next clever move, having laid down peltoelectric substrate onto their original heat source, was to, how can I put it to you, was to say that if we put electrical power into the chip and we let the chip charge up over 2 or 3 minutes, 2 or 3 hours, 2 or 3 days, it doesn't really matter how much time it takes, but once the chip is charged, it will close the thermodynamic loop. And so consequently, our random alpha particles, our random electrons, have now been lined up and they're flowing through the substrate as if it is a, how can I put it to you, a amplifying chip. And now they tell us that put that chip as a cellular chip and put them all together, line them up in parallel or in series. And once they're charged, electric power forever and ever, until the material loses its ability to generate alpha particles, which are random electrons. Now we go back to my book. What if we make the entire circular aerofoil out of their material? Now you have a continuous source of electrons to feed your plasma. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, in this short video, I have told you how to turn those wonderful science fictions, films of the 50s. They came from outer space. War of the worlds. Invaders from Mars. And then, of course, the Forbidden Planet. Oh, that classic film of that beautiful saucer with its humming noise. Yes, in this video, I have opened the door. I have shown you the future. And if we follow the diamond chip, and if you follow the technology in my book, we can move society from its stone age of technology today and give it a 1,000-year kick. So we've missed out 1,000 years of evolution. In 20 years, in 2 decades, we could be the people on board the saucer and taking us to the Forbidden Planet. I thank you.